Hey, everybody, are you here? Hi. So I don't know who's here. We'll give it a couple seconds as people come on, but let's introduce each other. Jill, why don't you go first?
Well, should I introduce Kim? Is that what you
Sure.
wanted?
Sure, go for that.
So, Kim Abbott is on, and she is the minority lead over in the House. And she is currently running for office.
So I can introduce Jill. Jill is the Senate Minority Leader and has been around for 16 years. House, Senate, tons of experience, and coming over to join our caucus in the House, hopefully, this next time running for the House.
And then we both get to do that.
What it's like. Kev, do you want me to introduce you? Happy
to. Sure, I'd love to hear an introduction of me.
Kev, gay extraordinaire. Like incredible activist, incredible Democratic Party volunteer, somebody that is interested in not only politics but policy all across issues, and we're really lucky to have him as a candidate for the PSC. I'm psyched about it.
All the wonky stuff, yeah.
Well, wait a second. Now I get to come back to Kim because I was, just trying to get a little short thing through so I can say wonderful things about Kim and her leadership in the House with, at least in the Senate, we have a little bit of a modicum of, kind of people behaving a little better. So the way that you have been able to run the House and have relationships with the Republicans to get stuff done in the minority that we've been in has been amazing and incredible. And you're also a great leader in messaging and thinking through policy and thinking through strategy, which I have really appreciated our work together on that kind of stuff because, thinking about what the last session was like for both of us, I don't know if we would had been able to get through if we hadn't had each other and that ability to work together.
So. Same.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple of sessions. Like we've had bad people all around, bad bills. We've had the American Legislative Exchange Council, or as I like to call them, keep coming up with some of the worst bills in the world. Yeah. So while we're waiting for people to join us, because it's always fun when the people are online, just so you know, if you're watching this online, you can actually use the chat systems on YouTube and Facebook to send us questions and we can put them up. If you're on Twitter, just tweet at me. I have it open so that I can keep an eye on what's going on and make sure that we can get your questions answered because it's super fun. But tell me a little bit about what you guys see coming up with this election. How are you going to win?
We have some amazing candidates.
Yeah.
So well, let's explain this to people because some people don't understand like some of the inner workings of the party. It's a lot like a black box for a lot of people, and I think it's always really funny when people go, "Oh, well, the party just doesn't do this." I'm like, I sit on the board, and I don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes it's like, do you think we all go into a dark room and there's a hat? And somebody goes, "Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?" Or something like that, because that's not how any of this works. But one of the things that we have is part of our organization is called MDLCC, which you two, being the legislative leaders, are kind of de facto in charge of. So why don't you talk a little bit about what MDLCC does for people as they're running, for candidates, how we expect it to play out in the next race?
Yeah. MDLCC is our caucus program. It's meant to support Democratic candidates running in House and Senate districts that are targeted to make sure that they can compete and win. So Jill and I, way back, like right after the legislative session, got together and we're like, this is how we want to build MDLCC. We want it to represent rural communities, tribal communities, the places that we're strong, the places that we need to build Cascade County, and the places that we need to hold Silverbow and Deer Lodge County. And so we built a steering committee, I think, and this might be wonky for folks that are watching, but like a steering committee that would like really represents the places that we want to work in. And I think, I don't want to speak for Jill, but I think we're really proud of that. And we recruited collectively staff at MDLCC, legislators in our caucus, me and Jill ourselves, an incredible slate of candidates to go out and pick up seats, defend what we have, and flip some seats that matter. And it's really fun. Like when you look at Cascade County and Hill County, we have just like proven winners. Like we have candidates coming back that have previously won all or part of their districts, and they're going to win again, and I'm psyched about that. So I don't know, like I think Jill and I are having like a ton of fun working with Scott and Sierra and Faith, the whole team and like candidates to be like, okay, how can we raise money? How can we support you? How can we get out and knock on doors? Like, like how can we meet metrics? And like Jill is in a targeted House seat where we're like, how can we support you? How can we get out doors? How can we,
Yeah.
So it's really,
how did I get so many people in my race? It's crazy.
I don't know.
How many people are in your race?
So there's a Democratic primary, so 2 people in the Democratic side, and then there's 3 Republicans running.
I can't endorse in a Democratic primary because I sit on the board. Let me see. I got to figure out how to point. Where am I going? What's going on with my hands?
What are you doing? Yeah.
So that's what we do, though, that we worked really hard on getting some amazing candidates. If phone calls needed to be made to some great candidates, Kim was on that. I called several people to try to bolster them and say, you need to run because we need you specifically because your profile, the way you do business, the people that is how we're going to take some of these seats back in some of these areas that we lost. And my biggest hope is that the work of MDLCC, the work of the party, is going to support basically this system that we put in place, which is going to allow for us to get back in front of the voters, because I think the pandemic was difficult. I think the fear mongering was difficult. I think the nationalization that the Republicans did, scaring people in every community across the state, is part of why we need to get in front of them again and say, Montana is in a great position. We can be better. Please, the values of Montana are at stake. And I think if we can get in front of those voters, they're going to vote the value system of these Democratic candidates.
Well, I hope so too. I'm going to ask you another question because this has just come up. The Republicans have done the whole, we need a special session because we need to talk about election integrity. Now, for those of you playing along at home, I would like to point out that the Republicans won a substantial amount of their races statewide. They won the entire land board. They won a lot of county and civic posts. They won the AG, obviously. And, do they honestly think that their wins were illegitimate? Is that where we're at with this? I'm assuming you've both said that you're opposed to the special session, yeah?
Of course.
When will we find out what the count is on that? Do we know?
So they have 30 days to respond.
And it just went out last week?
Yeah. So I think we'll maybe the end of April, probably, Jill. Do you think?
I think so, because I don't know. So they were sent out. I think most people got them the end of last week. And so 30 days from when they were mailed, I'm guessing that was either Tuesday or I'm just guessing Tuesday or Wednesday from when I got my thing in the mail. And if people don't send it back, then that's a no vote, which is
Right.
great because they tried
Yeah,
to send, they
but
tried
it
to
takes
muck
30
around
days
with
to count
that.
it that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I think the funny part is I will just give Lori Bishop the most stellar thought process on what she has to say about this. She's going, I think the Republicans won all of the state offices fair and square.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah, it is confusing. I mean, I think Jill and I both know, and I think people on the state know that we have local election officials who run our election, monitor them, who work really hard, who do it with integrity and in compliance with the law. And so it's just a really stunning thing to have this set of Republicans like coming after our local folks who are locally elected and running these elections well, you know.
and in many cases, they're Republicans.
In most cases, there were Republicans, Kev.
That's the thing that I just don't
So,
understand.
so what I say is Republicans run elections in the state, and recently Republicans win elections in the state. And so
Right.
it's
And the Democrats are going, yeah, one kind of fair and square, and it sucks, but we'll deal with it. Whereas the
right.
Republicans are going, it's just not secure enough. We don't think it's fair.
Yeah, but it really is. Like, I think, and I know Jill has a lot to say about this, but like in so many ways that we run government in the state of Montana, it really comes down to a partnership between the state and local entities, and that is true with elections. We have, you know, a state entity that is like setting some rules and expectations, and then we have a whole bunch of local folks who are implementing them, you know, in a way that complies and makes sense. And so that's what's been confusing to me is I'm like, oh man, like everywhere across the state, we have local folks who are implementing elections in a way that aligns with integrity, you know, and transparency. And so like, what are we screaming about? Republicans? Like this all makes sense. Like these are people we know, and these are people that are doing a good job. So, and it's their folks that are checking it, you know, at the state level. So
yeah.
And every time that there's been a question about election integrity that has been questioned in other states or other places, and any kind of an effort to actually undermine it or to check on it has come out in favor of the fact that this was a free and fair election. There has been no evidence that there has been an issue with any of the elections. You know, we know that none of our voting machines are attached to the internet, so they can't be hacked. We know just about the integrity of the people that are working in every community. Well, and I trust them. I trust the fact that we lost the election last time because we know why we lost it. Yeah. It was the nationalization. It was the fear mongering. And I think Montanans are smart enough to know that the things that were, you know, being told to them back then, you know, we were all didn't know how the pandemic was going to go. But I do think that people can have some hope for what the future looks like. And hopefully that fear has gone. And I'm hoping that they can look forward in Montana to what an amazing future we can have with what we've had to get through this. You know, our unemployment rate is so low. You know, we've got a lot of things to work on, and we have a little bit of time to work on it. So I'm hoping we get that opportunity from Montanans to be able to work on them with these democratic values that we all hold.
One of the things that people may not realize, and I love this, is that the elections are finished, the counts are in. They are not official until they are audited. And the auditing happens by going around to actual places and checking ballots against the tallies on various races. And those are randomized. So it's impossible for any of this to be broken the way they say it's broken. I mean, there are other ways it could be broken. There are things that can go wrong. It is not perfect. I'm not saying that, but it is really close. And the work that we put into making sure that it's fair and accurate is not like we're just guessing. And the fact that the Republicans who do the work are being accused by the Republicans who benefited the most by it is so bizarre to me. It's just literally, I don't understand where you're coming from.
Well, I understand, Kev.
Okay.
Like it is a national narrative that has nothing to do with Montanans or Montana.
Yeah, and it feels really crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the fact that back when there was a prior Secretary of State who I will not name, went after the elections officials in a hearing in the interim. He got his butt handed to him by those folks saying, "Where's your evidence? You say that there's fraud and abuse. Where is your evidence?" And he said, "Well, there was a couple of instances where a husband signed his wife's envelope and all of that." And and the election officials those were caught.
Yeah.
Those people didn't get to have their ballots counted. They had to come in and fix stuff before they could have their ballots counted. So the election officials are the ones that are on the front lines of doing this work, and they're doing an amazing job. So you don't call that fraud, because the system was in place to catch that, fix it, and allow for those folks to vote, which they did, which was amazing.
Right. And, what have we had? 3 other cases of fraud in the state, and it's all been Republicans? Yeah. I'm not saying it's your problem.
Yeah, but the most important thing is, it got caught.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just a reminder to all the people that are at home and watching, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, if you're wherever, send us questions. We're happy to answer them. That is the whole point of this thing, after all. I love that every time Jill moves, her light's like, I'm going to be brighter now, and then I'm going to be darker. Technology is awesome.
As bad. At least I'm not in the dark like I was in the last one.
Well, I wish I knew how to do that. I'm jealous.
I think you just actually need a cursed light.
It's going to get darker and darker over time.
Do you think?
It's her drinking light.
Too bad I'm not drinking.
Yeah, well, it's water. It counts. So as you've been going into this race, obviously, we are past the deadline to file. We are into primaries. Jill, you have a primary. I have a primary. Kim, do you have a primary?
No primary. Nope.
No primary. So how is so this is obviously my first race, and it's super fun because I've been one of the conversations I had with my mother many, many years ago, as friends have stepped into politics and then not done the work to get elected. It was my mom's statement was, well, there's a lot of people that have been to the Coliseum and think they can be gladiators. And they're wrong. So and it's been a trip doing some of it, as I've, my race has been a little bit weirder than most because I didn't have a primary, but I did have a lawsuit on the districts, which made it so a lot of my phone calls were, are you going to be able to run? And the answer was, I don't know. And people are like, well, I'm not going to give you money, which is legit. But now that I can run, I can race twice as much because I have a primary. So I'm like, okay, I guess. So now I just tell people that it's much more expensive to support me, and $800 is a delightful way to make magic happen. So, but how's it been for you guys as you've dealt in? This is, Jill, your 6th race, 7th race?
600th race.
Well, and so here. So I did my 8 years in the House starting in 2003.
So that's 4 races.
Out for 2, but I had run and lost because it was a very Republican district at that time. Right. It got redistricted, and then I ran and I won that Senate seat because that's what I had run for, was the Senate seat, and it was East Helena and that northern Jefferson County stuff. That was
so this is your 8th race. I have enough fingers. I was able to count that. My math teacher, my 3rd grade teacher, Marilyn Hayes, would be so proud of me.
Actually, this should be my 10th, because you go 4 in the House. Oh, no, you're right, because the 2.
Only 2 in the Senate, and then 1 that you lost, and a new one.
You're amazing, Kev.
Well, I literally was holding up my fingers. I'm like, I would write it down, but I didn't have a pen handy. So what's it like? I mean, it's obviously kind of old hat to run the race, but what's it like to go out and talk to all the people again and, find out what's going well, what's going bad, what they're saying, especially because with the last race, I mean, you obviously didn't have a race in 2020, Jill, but you were dealing with the fallout from it. How is it as you're going back and you're seeing these constituents and you're talking to them about what you want to do going forward? What are the major concerns they're coming up with?
Well, and what we're hearing is, that housing is a huge issue. Childcare is a huge issue. That's the stuff that local communities are really struggling with, and we're hearing it. You knock on the doors, and people are like, in their rental and saying, "I've looked, I've put money down, I can't find a place to live. I want to have a home for my family, but I'm going to be stuck in this rental, which the price of the rental has gone up." And there's quite a few people that I've been talking to that haven't even been able to go back to work because their kids have nowhere to go, which I think is really concerning for our communities. That we have this low unemployment, and we have people that really want to go back to work, and they can't because they can't access childcare for their kids that's affordable. So
Yeah.
that's the stuff that I'm hearing from people. But I mean, I think there's some hope that I don't think I've heard over the last couple of years. I really, I think that it was very concerning for people, what was going to happen with the pandemic. Now, as we're coming out of it, I do hear hope in the people that I'm talking to.
Well, that's good. What about you, Kim?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same kind of thing. We're we're struggling with an economy that is in flux. Like we have some serious workforce issues, like Jill said. We know we need to address childcare and affordable housing. Um, like people, like small businesses, medium-sized businesses can't hire people right now in the communities they're operating in, because there isn't housing for them and there's not childcare for them. So I think we have a real focus on working with small businesses to try to solve those problems, and we recognize that there are some things we can do short term, but like we need to get together with the business community, state government, legislators, local government to come up with a long term solution, for this. Um, you know, as I wander around and talk to folks, there's so much anxiety about the cost of living increases. Um, and I feel like what Jill and I had been hearing about from our colleagues in Bozeman and Missoula is now hitting Helena, which had been like a fairly stable environment in terms of cost of living. And so we need to get out and figure out how to address that. And I don't have the answers, but I am very interested in being part of the solution on it. And I'm hearing about it a lot.
That's definitely it's one of the things that I was up at the Flathead and they were bringing up. Can the PSC do anything about housing? No,
Right.
other than we could make sure that electricity doesn't price you out of your home,
Right.
that your fuel and utility costs don't make it so that you can't live there, which is definitely a concern. We do have a question from Tim Warburton on Twitter. What's the top priority for the next session, and why is it addressing the climate crisis? Seriously, though, another year of inaction will be devastating. Thoughts?
I would say that's why is it not addressing climate is my guess. I'm just going to.
Well, no, I think he was saying it snarky. It's like, what's the top priority? It's of course the climate crisis, which it is. I mean, everything about the climate is a crisis, so we kind of have to face it. Mm-hmm. How are you guys going to approach it especially with the Republicans who don't want to believe any of this is real?
Well, and part of what I think I want to work on is this whole issue around Colstrip, right? I mean, because we have had a bunch of things brought to the legislature that we can't find a solution to. And I think that the companies that are trying to get out of coal are stuck between a rock and a hard place there. And they're trying to figure out, because we're talking about Washington State saying you're going to get out of coal by a certain date. Well, that tells me that the market for coal is not going to be enough for the future of Montana. So why would we put all of our eggs in that basket? Why aren't we looking to diversify? Why wouldn't we want to be on the cutting edge of what everything looks like in the future? Because we have wind and we have solar and we have all of those also natural resources to be able to be put to use. And why aren't we on the forefront of developing those so that we can be a part of the balance as coal goes away and these other things come in? We should be on the forefront of that. And I think we're being held back, and we're going to continue to basically trumpet the fact that we have to be working on this. And it's not just for Montana, it's going to be for the world if we don't get a handle on this.
Right. Kim, do you have anything to add?
I think the only thing I would have to, so I agree with that. I think the thing that makes me anxious about the place we're at is the longer that we don't take action, the less control we have over our economic future here. Yeah. And I think there are a number of places that we could invest in workforce training to move to sort of new energy economy jobs, make sure those are union jobs. And I'm worried that if we get too entrenched, we won't grab those opportunities, and it makes me feel anxious. So I think Jill and I are part of those conversations. Like many important, thoughtful players are part of those conversations. Like I hope that we'll be able to have a smart and productive transition. But it's anxiety producing. At the moment.
And we definitely need more Democrats to have that discussion.
Yeah.
And so, Kim, from your PSC, go ahead, Kim.
I was just gonna say, I feel like the folks that are coming into the state, and by folks I mean companies, like sort of new energy companies coming into the state, are not anti-union. We have to be smart and proactive about making sure that like those are union jobs. They should be union jobs. That's what I want. That's what Jill wants. That's what Kev wants. Like, let's make sure that we're in those conversations in a way that results in that outcome, I guess.
The only thing that I would add to that, I've been talking to different companies that have been trying to build wind and solar in Montana. And there's so many different parts of this that are moving pieces of the puzzle. But one of the big ones is that the PSC has only allowed for 10-year contracts on pricing.
Yeah.
And because of that, the investments, the people that are willing to build these things, which are billion-dollar things, they are good paying jobs. They take a long time to build. They will generate electricity. They will do all the things that we want to do, but there's no guarantee that there's a negative guarantee that they'll get their money back, which is why they're not investing. And it's simply a matter of let them have a longer contract. So some of this is active policy choices being made by the poor choices of who we elected in the past. So we need to clean some of that up, and we need people that are going to be willing to stand up and call out the bad actions of these people. One of the things that I think is really sad about the PSC, and for a long time, is that it's so unknown, but that's because the people that are involved have no ability to tell the story of what the PSC does, and so nobody ever hears it. Like, they're never in the press. And in some ways, that's probably a good thing, because when they do get in the press, it's because they're pushing ivermectin for somebody in the hospital. Not exactly the choices they should be making. Instead, what they should be doing is, hey, we're going to do this thing, and we're going to make it better for all of Montanans. Here's how it's going to work, and here's how we're going to work with our energy company, because it's not like Northwestern has to be the enemy on all of this. It's not like natural gas has to be the enemy over the next 10 years. Although starting up a new natural gas plant in Laurel that includes a pipeline under the Yellowstone River that was pushed through without public comment is a really bad way to treat the constituents of Montana. The citizens of Montana don't deserve to be ignored, and they don't deserve to have something forced on them that is both bad tech and dangerous to part of our most prized land. So I'm hopeful that it's part of the reason that I'm running is I want to have a voice that is somebody who's willing to actually be in the middle of these fights and be the person that says the things that get heard. So it's something that needs to be fixed, and I'm looking forward to the PSC actually being the one to take the lead on this, when I'm there, because why not? We have another question. It's really long. It's from Katie Applet. So I'm going to put it up, and I'm going to read it as much as I can. It is, do you work with the sanctuary city policy, and how? Promotion of local businesses as well as supporting small businesses regarding refugees in the Missoula area also affects economic growth, development, and social services. Are we looking at resources for, hold on, I got to hide it so I can finish the rest of it. Are we looking at resources for these people we are accepting also being sustainable and productive for the wide spectrum of new community members? And then her next part of the question is asking, as a born and raised Montana folk, hoping that our community traditions continue. I think this is a really interesting question. One of the things that obviously we've been dealing with is the Republican leadership of the state has been very sort of, we won't take refugees. So I'll let you two take an answer at that one.
So I can start off with this one. So I don't think it's true that there isn't sort of a bipartisan understanding that we need to step up and take refugees. We've seen, well, Rosendale aside, like that's the outlier. But I feel like Jean Forte and Daines have been like, yeah, of course, and Democrats, of course, when you have a significant crisis, you accept refugees into your community and you help set them up for success. And so I think my first response to, like, it was so long, I can't remember the first question, but like, yes.
Do you work with sanctuary city policy?
So sanctuary city is a very, like, that is, I just want to be clear that sanctuary city policies that don't exist in Montana are entirely separate from whether or not we welcome refugees. So that's the first thing I want to say. Sanctuary city policies, I think, are reasonable policies that localities pursue when they want to manage the way that their law enforcement and public health and safety resources are distributed. So do they want to like chase down someone that might not have the right paperwork, but is just a person working in the community and trying to get by? Or do they want to actually pursue people that are a threat to the community? Like that's sanctuary city. And we don't have any of those. And so it barely matters. But I think that's from my perspective, that's a reasonable policy for law enforcement and local government to think about the way they prioritize their dollars, their resources, their man hours. On the way that we welcome and help refugees, yeah, man. Like, I think like Helena, like Jill and I know, like Helena is so open to help folks that have been displaced, families that need some help. Both of us have worked with Christine Kaufman a ton over the years. Like, she is one of the central people trying to help coordinate sharing resources and helping Afghan refugees land in this community and succeed in this community and become part of this community. And so I'm psyched about that. And Jill, so I talked so long, I'm sorry.
You're fine. I mean, it really is our local community and how we think about it. A lot of times the federal government brings the resources in to at least get folks settled. What they don't do is do this ongoing stuff. And that's really where the community steps in to try to help them to find a place to live, to find the job, to do all of that stuff. They get help from certain organizations and federal federal folks to basically get the paperwork they need and to get settled and all of that. So it really is up to these local communities to be welcoming for these folks. And I really think that Montana does a great job of that. I mean, there's certain communities are better than most. But I think that the ones that are open are, have got an infrastructure that really is there to help people make it through. And I'm appreciative of Helena and it being that welcoming beacon. Missoula, Bozeman, a lot of these areas have stepped up to try to help folks. And, I think this stuff that's going on with Ukraine just made me even more cognizant of how welcoming our communities are in Montana to take folks that are displaced because of war. And so I'm proud to be a Montanan.
Yeah. Katie hopes that answers your question. Apparently it did, because she said, thank you for addressing this, which we'll show you now. I love the system where people actually can ask us questions. Yeah. But they're not really chatty tonight. What else? Another comment from Katie. We'll throw that up really quick. What else do you see as a challenge going forward in the next couple of months as we deal with, we're coming up on summer. How are you going to be doing outreach? I don't know if you noticed, today was really warm. Like summer hit us early. Although it rained today. I was driving back from the Flathead. It was dry as a bone up there. And I got down here and I was like, oh, it's raining. How delightful.
Kind of. It spritzed it.
It rained as I was driving in. Nice. I feel like it was good.
Nope. It's exciting to be in Montana. I'm excited to be knocking doors and talking to our constituents. You asked a little bit earlier, Kev, about knocking doors, and it's one of my favorite things. I mean, it's always hard to get started doing it, but once you get started, it's like people are like, oh, I'm so glad you showed up. And we've had 2 years of really not doing it.
Yeah.
So right? I kind of think that people are okay with it this time. I'm not getting people who are like, oh my God, you're back again. I'm not getting that at all.
That's good.
It's nice.
Yeah. Let's see. What else do you want to talk about? I'm trying to remember some of the questions that came up today that were more legislative than PSC, but I'm drawing a blank. Sorry.
You got some, Kim? Kim's got some.
Well, no, I think, like as we roll into this cycle, I think there's a real contrast between us and Republicans, and I'm very excited to talk about it on Doors. Jill, I haven't started on Doors. Jill has. But like we have a generational opportunity to invest in infrastructure and all kinds of infrastructure, like brick and mortar infrastructure, but also also childcare infrastructure. And we see this administration just digging in and refusing to put money out to communities in a way that we really need it. Like we know that for small businesses to hire, the biggest barriers are housing and childcare. We hear it all the time, every day. And we actually have tens of millions of dollars to invest to take care of that problem. And it's not happening from this administration. And so I think like Jill and I are both really frustrated with that. We're trying to figure out how to interact with the administration to express that frustration as elected leaders and also help our constituents voice their frustration about it, because it's a little wonky, right? Like you have this like incredible investment opportunity that's delivered by Tester, and it's just sitting in a state bank account.
Wait, except for when they want to show up to like shovel a piece of dirt because they want to take some credit for it, even though they all voted against it.
Oh, they don't do that, right?
No.
Oh, they do that?
They do.
It's so awful.
But that's what, like, to answer your question, Kev, that's what I'm thinking about all the time is like, how do we communicate to Montanans? Like, Democrats have real solutions to these issues, and Republicans are just talking about like culture war nonsense.
Yeah.
You know?
They spend a lot of time not talking about the things that are important to Montanans over and over and over again.
Right. Well, I'm going to pull something from the news recently. There's apparently $327 million that may be returned to the federal government because it hasn't been handed out by our state administration. And that money is for everything. It's for feeding kids, fixing schools, improving education, improving access to education. And there's no reason for it. Like, it is literally just a temper tantrum on the part of the administration saying, well, I didn't want it, so you can't have it, when people are in desperate need. And this is one of the things where, you hear often when we're dealing with politics that, oh, well, they're voting against their best interests. It's like, this is concrete proof of that happening. That the people that need it the most are rural counties, and they voted for this administration in huge numbers. And this administration is turning a blind eye to them and saying, we just don't care.
And the monies that have been distributed are the things that went directly to local government and didn't go through this administration. Right. And so we already know that the federal government has clawed back, $53 million from the state because they didn't get it out in rental assistance like they should have. They could have taken care of a lot of back rent that people owed from all during the pandemic and the inability of people to go to work. And they didn't do it. They didn't get it out on the ground. And so now we're having problems. Basically, they're going to take some more housing assistance. They're going to take the rental assistance. They're going to take food out of the mouths of our kids. That's insane. And they can't get the money out to the schools for the pandemic recovery, which would have included infrastructure and the ability to actually work on school buildings. I don't know how Montanans can continue to support this effort when the money is this is our tax money that came back to Montana to help our own citizens, and they can't even get it out to them. I agree 100% with you guys.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. Let's
talk here's the contrast in the legislature. We pushed so many bills to try to get this out to people.
Yeah,
we tried and tried and tried.
I mean, that's true. I think what's interesting to me is I've been on rental assistance specifically. I think the state employee staff that is trying to get that out is dedicated. They have the same goals as us. Like, they're working hard for it. And what's been frustrating to me is the administration is setting up levels of bureaucracy between people who need, and it's ironic to me, and I don't think anybody gives a shit about hypocrisy or irony, but like we are setting up so many barriers between people that need rental assistance, and it's the difference between them having a home and not having a home. Like, just bureaucratic barriers. And it's not like, I don't blame the folks that are administering that program. They're doing a good job and trying really hard and, have the same goals as us. But we could be making it easier to get money from not just the state to renters who need it, but from the state to landlords who would like not to evict their renters. And we are making it so bureaucratically impossible for landlords, not renters, landlords, to get this money that it's not going through. So I just think it's an interesting thing to see, an administration that came in talking about government efficiency and effectiveness, just by and large create more bureaucracy between the people that need government services and government services.
Yep.
Like that's been a very interesting experience for me.
Well, and one of my biggest concerns is you hit it on the head, Kim, about the public employees that are trying to provide quality services. And you've also got an administration that is not on their side. They have so many open positions. They are not filling current positions with employees because they won't pay enough to keep people in state government and providing those important services. We are watching, I believe we are watching the privatization of the state hospital as we speak. It's been in the newspaper a lot in the last few weeks, and there's trying to be some legislative oversight of what's going on, but they have refused to use the resources that have been given to them by the federal government to keep those healthcare providers in that state hospital in those jobs. He is willing to pay a traveling nurse 4 to 10 times what the current employees are getting in wages, and he won't pay them, but he's going to pay a private entity to come in and take these positions. And more than half of the staff now, I believe, or half the staff now, is these private traveling nurses. And so what can the outcome of this be if the governor's office and the administration won't even support the public employees that are trying to do the work? And we're in so much trouble right now with the federal government. I'll be surprised if it stays open, and if it does, it's probably going to have to. I mean, I think we're watching the privatization of public services as we speak. And the way that I'm seeing it inside of my department, which I'm a state employee, I'm a public employee, and I work in the state lab, but I work in DPHHS. So I'm watching them not fill positions everywhere in our department. And it scares me that they're going to essentially under-resource every one of these critical services that are not just for urban areas in Montana, but there's so much for rural areas in Montana. But we're going to underfund them to the point where we'll have to privatize them because they broke it. And so I think that the state hospital is the first try at this. He's already put $2 million on the table to bring some outside entity in to run or look at the place and decide what needs to be done. He could be investing in those state employees. He could be investing in those quality services, and he refuses to do so. And it should frighten every Montanan.
All right. That's all the doom and gloom. But what are the good things that we have coming up?
Oh, good things like getting out on the doors and talking to Montanans about our solutions around affordable housing and childcare. Primarily, I mean, I think if you look at, so there's a lot of conversation about property tax. Jill had a bill that
I had 3 bills.
Well, I'm going to talk about one bill that was basically like, listen, like your property tax won't exceed your ability to pay by income. Mm-hmm. The end. Republicans were like, we hate that. Mm-hmm. We hate it. Put it down. They didn't do anything about property tax. They gave a bunch of giveaways to out-of-state folks. And I think we get to get out and talk about that on the doors. We get to get out and say, when we hear, hey, I'm worried about my property tax, it's going up. We get to say, hey, we have this bill that ties property tax to income. And like, you will not get priced out of this house. Mm-hmm. Right? I think we have a bunch of ideas about public-private partnerships around childcare to make sure that we aren't leaving people behind who want to join the workforce but cannot because there is no accessible, adequate childcare. We could have a whole episode about it, Kev, but I'll skip it.
I think we should. I honestly think we should. I was talking to a friend of mine and I was like, what is it that you're planning on doing in 5-10 years? Where do you see yourself? And her answer was, well, I see myself at home because I will have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, and childcare is $40,000 a year.
Right.
Like that's unsustainable. That's just ridiculous. And that means
And
that half of our economic drivers are stuck at home. And that's don't get me wrong. Being a stay-at-home parent is a great thing. I think it's really awesome for the people that want to do it. I don't. I think children are delightful. You give them a bunch of ice cream, light them up, and send them home. They're great.
So listen, Kev, but that's an important, actually, and Jill and I just talked about this over the weekend, but we are creating a situation where it's not a choice whether you get to have a family.
Right.
Like, you and I have chosen not to have a family. Jill has chosen to have a family. But right now, you don't have a choice. It's too expensive to have a family. You cannot figure it out. And that's not Montana. And I think Democrats have ideas about how to reconcile that, how to make sure people can get adequate childcare, adequate housing, small businesses can hire people that they need for the workforce. And yeah, let's do another one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be all about that. We're coming up on the end of this, and I love having these conversations, and I'm trying to make sure that we have more of them, because one of the things that I think that was missing from the last election was just being able to talk to the people that are running for office. I will be the first to admit that I come across as very imposing, especially if I'm having a morning without coffee when I'm stomping around downtown. But if you ever see me out and about, I'm actually a very nice guy, and I'm happy to have a conversation with any of you. Even if you disagree with me. I got the greatest Facebook message from a friend of mine that I went to high school with. He's like, I don't like your policies. I think you're wrong on most of the stuff. I'm voting for you. I'm like, okay. And he's like, the thing is, at the end of the day, while I disagree with your policies, I know you're honest and I know where you stand. And that's more important to us. And I'm like, great, I'll take it. Oh, we have another question. You guys want another question from the audience? Of course you do. This is from Josh Dalzell. What resources do we in the community have to help facilitate the movement into Montana for Ukrainian refugees? Oh.
So everyone should know that this is my son-in-law.
Oh.
It's a plant. It's a plant.
I did not plant this. He did not plant this. So, but we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the issue is there is federal assistance for refugees when they first get to communities. And I don't know. I think Montana is being incredibly welcoming to folks that want to come here. I think communities are being incredibly welcoming to people who want to come here. And there are community resources in different communities across our state that are really stepping up to the plate to help those refugees. I don't know if there's anything, I don't know if there's anything more that we can do unless it's maybe a letter to the administration saying, do we need you, Governor, to say we want to take people to the federal government? I don't know. I don't know how that works, but
one of the
I would be willing to do that to try to help get things moving if they aren't moving in the right direction.
One of the things that I do know about anything that happens with refugees that are coming in, the State Department has a huge influence in that, obviously. And so Tester's office will definitely have part of it. Technically, so would Danes and Rosendale, although I don't know how helpful they would be with it. But definitely if it's something where you're looking at, hey, we want to make sure that we have a place for them to come in our town, get with your civic leaders, make sure that your town council or the county commissioners, or if it's unified like Silverbow, the commission gets together and talk about what it is that you need, because there are federal programs to make sure that those happen. I mean, Soft Landing Missoula is not funded by the city of Missoula, although it's certainly supported by them. It's funded by federal dollars.
Mm-hmm. And there's a gal that works for DPHHS that is also helping to directionalize, like, where do people go? I think that she's very much in contact with the federal government about what are the opportunity, or what opportunities do we have to be able to bring people in? So she's a pretty amazing person. And I know she's working hard because she's had to do it with the Afghan refugees. Now we're getting the Ukrainian ones. And I think a lot of the Ukrainian ones, I think, are family oriented. And we actually have quite an extensive group of Ukrainian folks that live in the state of Montana. I did not know that until I had spoken to her. And she said a lot of them are family members that are trying to bring their family here, and they're trying to facilitate that. So, this is something that we can definitely, as Montanans, I think we're in a good spot with getting people in.
Yeah. Kim, what did you want to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that actually DPHHS has some infrastructure for this, and we can work with them locally to make sure that people land in a solid spot.
Cool. And that infrastructure hasn't been gutted yet by the current administration,
as far as I know.
No, she said she's got it. I talked to my gal, and she's fabulous.
Great. Well, we're just wrapping up. We've got about 4 minutes left before 8 o'clock. I want to thank everybody who came and showed up and asked questions, because that's how this matters to people, because we're all talkers. I've met all of us. We can talk about anything for hours, and whether it's interesting to somebody or answers the questions they actually have, it's always kind of a crapshoot. So it's really nice to have actual constituents come up and ask questions and say, hey, I don't understand this, or I'm looking to do this, or I'm trying to find this out. What can I do? So we're going to continue these every week. It will rotate faces in. You won't have to see all of us every week, although I'll probably be on a couple more as we get the tech in place for it. But thank you both for joining me. It's really great to have you. It's really great to do these conversations. Don't know who's going to be here next week. Anything else you want to tell people?
No, thanks for having me. It's just really fun to get to chit chat with you and Jill and across
and all the people at home.
Yeah.
Well, and it gives us that opportunity to engage with folks in a different way that we never have before. I mean, you knock on doors and you talk to individuals, but this is more of kind of a group thing, which I really appreciate, because it helps me to see what people are thinking and talking about. I would have never thought when we got on tonight that the Afghan, or that the refugee issue with Ukrainians and all of that was going to be our hot topic. But it's bubbling up from our community, and I love that. It's good to hear that. It's going to make me want to go and find out more about what it is that we can do to help. And so hopefully we'll know more as we move along.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that everybody needs to realize about the politicians. The ones that say they know everything are lying. And the ones that don't know everything will take the time to go learn it, because that's important. We all have our areas of expertise. I mean, Kim, you worked with Montana Human Rights Network forever, and you know just about everything when it comes to equality and equity and the things that we have to do to approach that for various different minoritized communities. Jill, you've worked in DPHHS and healthcare forever.
30 years this month. 30 years.
That's awesome.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
And so your knowledge is vast and impressive. But if I come to either one of you and I'm talking about telephone rates and technology, you both look at me like I'm crazy. And I have to explain it to you. And that's fine. That's the whole point. Because if you are confident in your ability to lead, you are confident enough to say, I don't know, let me go find out. But before I do that, please tell me your thoughts. Because generally, you'll get experts in the community who are going to step up and tell you amazing things that you didn't know, that you'll be able to verify and make better decisions because of. So the one thing that's left is, let's tell everybody where they can find you online. Although most everybody that's watching this right now found you through one of our socials. So, who knows?
I'm on Facebook and occasionally on Twitter. I'm not a twit. So
I'm terrible on the internet, but I am on both Facebook and Twitter. come and encourage me to be better.
I am on all of the socials, and part of the reason that I am on all the socials is because they're very useful. And Jill and Kim are going to teach me about knocking on doors here soon, and I am going to teach them about social media because I've raised as much money as they have, but I haven't talked to anybody. I've just used social media to do it, which is amazing. So,
okay, deal. Fine.
thing. We're going to share knowledge and work together. That's what Democrats do. That's why we're here. So, everybody, thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next week. We don't know who it's going to be, so you'll have to tune in. It'll be awesome. Let me throw up the thing to say goodbye, and we'll say goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.